Hi, I'm BODUR,
Hi, I'm Manni Dee.
and today we're going to be breaking down our track Ugly.
So we met a couple of years ago. I had a beat that I sent to my manager that I wanted to get a vocalist on, and yeah, my manager Anthony was in touch with your manager, and yeah, he said he knew someone that would be perfect for the track, and that was you.
Yeah, Anthony was at my first ever gig in Brighton when I was a teenager, so that was kind of crazy that all of those years later, a kind of rubbish gig I did that was my first ever one ended up having some kind of impact on him and him introducing me to you, and then yeah, us becoming really good friends and collaborators.
It was a great session because we kind of came in with like a moody R&B thing, but then bonded over like NERD records and
Yeah.
Timbaland and hyperpop stuff, and yeah, just realised we had really similar taste, and yeah, wanted to carry on working together.
Yeah, like Manny, you were trying to transition out of techno stuff you'd been making and transition away from that, and I wanted to transition away from the more R&B, like jazz stuff I'd been making, and we both were interested in stepping into this hyper pop, like more alt electronic realm, and we just found each other at the perfect time to just start experimenting. I had the concept for my album, Makam, quite a few months ago, before we made this song, and the concept is to set each song on the project in a different makam, and makam is an Arabic musical system that has really strong ties to specific stories. So one makam will mean one specific story and evoke that specific feeling, and another makam will tell another specific story and evoke that specific feeling. And this song Ugly is in makam NAHAWAND, which is basically like the Western minor scale. So it's not the juiciest out of the makams. It's one we hear quite often in Western music. But what I found interesting about this when I was learning it at my oud classes was that Nahawand can be very sad and captures like real emotional extremes. So if you're exploring lyrics that have emotional extremes, this is a good makam to sit in. If you play it fast, it can have like a really interesting emotional impact. So I think that's where the idea came from, to make a beat and a song that's like, I guess, for the club, right? And kind of up tempo, but the lyrical content is like really sad and like gluttonal and horrible. And
it's for people that want to cry in the club.
Cry in the club, tears in the club. Like, I think it was interesting to approach the song from that lens rather than making sad lyrics, sad song over a sad piano ballad.
Yeah, it was an interesting task for me as a producer as well, to work in different makams, because obviously like other tracks on the album, like you had like a unique and quite fixed concept of how you wanted things to be, and it's really refreshing to work within those guidelines as a producer. And I think you gave me a little brief on this one.
Yeah, how else did this song come about? I really enjoyed, in the process of making this whole project, of kind of assembling the Avengers of like the musicians and the producers that I work with. So for this song, because I knew I wanted it to be like a heavy dance tune, I called in Manni Dee, Obs, dance music legend, and I knew I wanted really like crazy, weird, like ugly sounds on this as well. And so I called in my producer friend Lapsung, who just makes these crazy electronic instrumentals. And if I want some kind of like grit like that, he's like who I'll go to for that.
He came through with like the ugliest textures.
Yeah, literally. And that's exactly what I wanted and what I wanted on this track. So it was really great to bring them into the studio with you. And then I like to also have a real like melodic, beautiful like musical element in all of my music, even if it is dance based. So I wanted my bassist James, who goes by the artist name Wonder Prince, to be on this song as well, who's a very long time collaborator of mine. And James came in the studio and played like actual bass guitar on this tune, which I think gives it a really interesting texture.
These are some of the ugly textures I think we should play.
Let's have a listen to it.
Oh wait, that's the vocal. So good. Those are some of the lap song textures.
Yeah,
I live it, when my skin sits untouched, when my lips lay on love, I answer to his name.
This is the bass.
so beautiful, this bass line. Was it two basses?
Two layers, yeah. Yeah, it's so cool because like it's kind of unexpected for it to go to that place.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously when I sent you the beat initially, it didn't have like a lot of that musicality in the second half. Yeah, and the kind of the vocal chops, kind of synthy vocal chops that Lap Song added was so sick.
Yeah.
It's something that I would never have thought to add something like this. And this kind of reminded, I remember saying during the session, it reminds me of a drill beat.
Yeah. And I remember when we were working on this song as well, like, no, maybe I'll let it play for a little bit. I remember when we were like working through this song and Matt was sat on the sofa and they were like, oh my god, I've got something.
Yeah.
And they couldn't find the specific sample for like 20 minutes, but they were like, wait, like I've got it. Like,
it was worth the wait.
It was really worth the wait, and like, yeah, when they threw that in, it was like, oh my god, this is taking the song to like a whole nother level.
The lyrical theme changes because when you say my currency went up when Kim dropped the tape,
Oh, yeah.
that part is just so sick, and it's like, you're so good at creating a story and a narrative in like, how long's the track? Like 3 minutes, even less, isn't it?
Or something?
2 minutes long, and like there's a whole journey you go through as the listener, musically, but also like mainly lyrically, going from like, you know, how you feel initially to how you feel you're perceived and finding confidence in it. And I think that's one of your skills. It's so good.
Thank you.
I don't think many people can do that well.
Thank you. And you seemed quite like moved by the song as well when I said the lyrics for the first time. Like,
yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's very. I mean, it was an emotional session. We were all kind of emotional because it's so personal, and for you to be like that raw in front of all of us as well, it was a really special moment, and it's just so kind of like. It's just so cutting when you hear the lyrics and you understand the concepts behind it. And I think it's resonated with so many people since it's come out.
Yeah, it's been nice to hear people say that they relate to it and stuff. And yeah, it was nice to be able to like get that off my chest in the room and have something exist out of that feeling that I've felt for such a long time and still kind of battle with back and forth now since it's existed. But it feels less intense because I've made something out of it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember after the first, I tried last night to find like the original recording on voice memos of me singing it before this session, and I couldn't find it because I think the first time I actually ever said it out loud was in here,
right?
Which is probably why I like cried. You were like, "Can I give you a hug?" James was like on the floor giving me a hug. It was like very intense and emotional, but probably my favorite day in the studio ever.
Yes, for sure. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
In terms of what I wanted people to take away from the track and from the video for this as well, I think it's, as a like female artist, you could sometimes be put in a really tight like bubble of what you should be in the music industry, and it's like you have to look sexy all the time, sex sells, this, and present yourself in this really like feminine, beautiful way if you want to get somewhere. And I think the choice to kind of make the music and my voice sound so intentionally ugly on this song, and to look so horrendous in the music video, you know, and like a really close up shot of me just looking awful, I think hopefully frees people up a little bit to realise that there's so many different creative avenues that they can go down, and actually probably like the most boring thing you can do is just stick within that like constraint of like what women are expected to do.
I think when we were recording it as well, you wanted to make sure the emotion was cutting through. Because I remember you talking about how like when Kendrick, he kind of sometimes raps almost as if he's in tears, and you wanted to get that across. And you were in tears at one point during the session, and like you just wanted to make sure that emotion came across. And yeah, there's certain parts in the track where you can really hear it.
Now I see it when I look in the mirror, from my eyebrows to the floor. I feel it to my core, ugly. Don't look at me, please, please look at me. Ugly, don't look at me, please, won't you look at me? Can't you see I do this all for you? And the only mouth I care about in the room.
I think that's one of my favourite parts. In terms of like, technically speaking, the kind of the weird pitching and stuff there. So like you said, we wanted to make it sound a bit ugly, so we've got some distortion, a couple of different distortions, and then kind of the tuning, how it drops here is really...
I love it.
It was an accident, that bit. I was just messing around with the flex
and
pitch.
then we were like, that
yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah. It was that one, and just bringing that note down.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think in terms of like what you wanted people to take away. It was just, I think it was more just about you kind of expressing how you felt and expressing how you thought you were perceived. And it's just so sick how many people have like messaged you about the track and feel as if you're kind of speaking to their experience. And even when you were talking about like, oh, there's actually a lot of people of colour involved in the creation of the track and like even the video and stuff, I didn't actually think about that. And like when you were doing the track here and like you were talking about like my currency went up when Kim dropped the tape and how kind of socially certain people being in the spotlight has an impact on how we're all perceived. Just stuff like that is kind of like more in the subconscious. So for it to be brought to the forefront through this track has been super interesting. It just makes you think about things. It just reminds you of how things work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
Every single day.
But as you say, like for a woman, obviously those things are kind of more, as a female artist,
Yeah.
those kind of things are more on your mind. Whereas like a producer guy in the background, it's kind of a bit easier to deal with, but they do still exist, those things.
I think that lyric, like my currency went up, I think I'm talking about like my skin colour or my racial identity as like a currency that goes up and down.
For sure.
I think is like a theme. I wanted that lyric to be in the first song where you hear my voice like on the album, because I think whatever happens with this album, like after it comes out, will kind of depend on where my currency is in the world afterwards as well, you know, or how it's perceived in a few years' time. Maybe if suddenly it's more criticised or it's more celebrated, will depend on where my like identity is on the stock system. So
so sick.
You know?
Yeah.
Is it trendy to like support someone like me or not? We'll
yeah.
see. Like,
Has inclusivity, like, is it out of fashion now?
is it out of fashion or is it more in fashion?
Yeah.
You know, where's the pendulum swinging? We'll see. We'll wait and see.
Yeah. So for the beat, when I sent it over to you, it kind of had these heavy 808s in, and then some more percussive elements to get the kind of Middle Eastern Turkish feel in. So I wanted to keep it quite stripped back, didn't we, for like the first half?
Yeah.
And just, you know, make it sound vulnerable and raw. Just have your voice with some quite industrial, well, not industrial, but kind of like, not industrial. That's the old Manni.
Trigger.
Quite harsh sounding percussion and obviously heavy 808s.
Yeah.
Don't look at me, but please look at me.
So that kind of formed the foundation. Yeah.
Can't you see I do this all for you?
And then I'm just so obsessed with like little vocal one shots. So I had this going in because it also kind of sounds like a bit of a chant.
What is that?
It's just a vocal that I chopped up and like distorted and
It's really cool.
and bounced down, because I just love little things like that. I think again it goes back to the Timbaland thing, you know, how to use like little baby noises and stuff. So there's all those bits.
So good.
And then some cool dropouts and stuff we did in the studio. And this is where it switches up. Like 1 minute, 4 seconds in, and then
See, ugly, it's what my ex said I was, and it's how you make me feel, so I must be fucking real, I must be ugly.
I think the new Synth Plant had just come out and Lap Song was playing around with it and he sent these bits over. This part. Such a good transitional sound.
Yeah.
It
Because the note doesn't... Does it go up, or it's just like saturated? Like
it goes up in pitch, it climbs up like a riser. It kind of signifies that something different is happening.
I love it.
Yeah. It's fucking great. And also this bass take does kind of sound like a guitar as well.
Yeah.
I remember James saying like, oh, you can play chords on the bass, and like a lot of people don't do that and don't even realise that you can do that.
I asked James to do chords on the bass a lot, and I love James as a bassist so much, as why I've played with him for so many years, because James is like an artist in his own right and writes top lines as a singer.
Oh,
and
sick.
so like I really feel like he has a top line melodic tendency like through the bass as well. It's not just as like a background thing.
Yeah,
it could
exactly.
be a top line by itself. Like
Yeah.
I find myself singing James's bass line from this song.
There's some other bass lines that we didn't use for the track that were really interesting. There was one that was like, oh yeah, it was this one. It sounded like a grime kind of sound.
That's so cool though.
Yeah, I was like, I might make a beat
Yeah,
out of that, a
I
separate
we can
track.
make something else out of that.
But I think it was just kind of hard to get that to sit in the mix, and with everything that was happening around this point.
Ended up perfectly, I think.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen now, but it's bound to drop, and when it does, I'm sure the word will brand my skin again. Ugly.
What are those drums at the end as well? That's really nice.
Yeah.
They're the same.
It was this layer that
Oh, so
Lapsung
nice.
sent over, so it was that plus the original drums.
Ugly. Ugly. Don't look at me, but please look at me. Don't look at me.
And then with the sample with a half time, obviously, and then crystallizer just to give it, without any pitching, just to give it a weird delay. Also the way it ends as well, I think we spent quite a lot of time on how it should end.
Yeah.
Because I think I took all the processing off your voice at the end, so it sounds right at the end. It just gets super close.
Yeah.
So I think this is what's this coming down?
And it was
All the
interesting.
sends.
Interesting for me. Like, do you want to play it first, and then?
Yeah.
Don't look at me, but please look at me. Don't look at me, but please, won't you look at me?
So you can hear all the sends turn off the reverb and like the vocal doubling. So it just sounds like right at the end you're coming just really close to the listener.
And yeah, it was the first time that I've made music for a project that long, like with the whole project concept like in mind. So it was interesting how the production of this one individual track was then in context of like 10 tracks, which I've not done before. And yeah, how like the choices of what we did at the end influenced what we did at the beginning of the song that followed. And I think the following day after this session, or like a few days afterwards, I went into another session with Gabriel Gifford and my bassist James and Malta, my guitarist, and we wrote the third song on the album, which is the one after this one, as a response to this song. And we were like, this song is ugly and the beat is ugly and the vocals are ugly, now let's try and make the most beautiful song we can make to follow it. And that was just a really nice way of working as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think like, yeah, you had quite a strong concept in mind for the project, but then obviously like, you know, you had some parameters that could change throughout the process, which I think is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
As an artist, is like, if you get too fixated on this is how it should sound, then you're not kind of in the moment. And I think it's great you kind of being a bit reactive in terms of like what was made the day before. And I just think, yeah, I've said this to you before, your taste is just, it's just great. You can't teach taste, and I think you've like in all aspects you've got it. And there's a couple of people I know like that, but it's quite rare, I think. I think that's what makes the project so special.
Thank you. I know how to pick good people to be in a room together.
Yeah, you do.
Including myself.